With Afghanistan caught in a ferment of grave uncertainty and the Taliban now in control and forming a government soon, many in India are deeply concerned at the country's future. As part of that concern, 11 well known Indian public figures have issued a joint appeal which expresses solidarity with the people of Afghanistan even as it leans on the Taliban to guarantee a whole lot of measures to ensure that peace returns to that country. One of the 11 signatories to the appeal is Sudheendra Kulkarni, a well known author, peace activist, and former journalist who extensively reported on Afghanistan in the 1980s and has since visited it frequently. Even while expressing deep concern over the current situation in Afghanistan, the appeal calls on the Taliban, now in charge of that country, to ensure that no terrorist organization has a sanctuary in the country and that its territory is not used for terrorist and extremist activities targeting any country in the world, near or far. The appeal also says that the Taliban guarantee the safety and security of every Afghan citizen, regardless of their ethnicity, ideology, or past political background. It says the safety and dignity and the rights of women should be guaranteed even while protecting minorities such as Hindus, Sikhs, and other non Muslims. Sudhindra spoke to Mayank Chhaya reports this morning from Mumbai. Sudheendra Kulkarni. Welcome to Mayank Chhaya reports. Sudhindra, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Same to you here, dear Mayank. Wonderful to be on your show once again after a long gap.
Thanks a lot. I am curious about an appeal that you and 10 others have issued in the interest of Afghanistan. I'm particularly interested because if the mighty weaponry of the United States couldn't convince the Taliban or defeat them for 20 years, what makes you think your appeal would have any impact on an essentially misanthropic group?
Mayank, let me explain to you why we issued this appeal yesterday on behalf of what we've called Indian Friends of Afghanistan. We've done so to show solidarity with the people of Afghanistan as they embark on a new path, a path of hope towards peace, national reconciliation, and national reconstruction. You will agree that Afghanistan has been through hell, nothing short of hell, 40 years of wars and violence. First, invasion by the Soviet Union for 10 years, 1979 to 1989. Then invasion by the United States of America for 20 years from 2001 until August 1st, 2021. And in between, again, there was a government of the Mujahideen, then by the Taliban. That did not bring peace to Afghanistan either. Afghanistan is India's civilizational neighbor. We may not be geographically Afghanistan's neighbor, but Afghanistan, India have been part of the same civilizational family, sharing very close social, cultural, spiritual bonds going back to thousands of years. And therefore, just as in the 75th year of our independence, we celebrate our freedom from colonialism, from foreign rule, we believe it is our duty to show solidarity with the people of Afghanistan when they have recovered their sovereignty from foreign occupation and foreign war. As you have seen, amongst the persons who have issued the appeal are very experienced persons. Natwar Singh, Yashwant Sinha, both former ministers of external affairs, Manishankar Iyer, Julio Ribeiro, a hero of India's own fight against terrorism. And of course, there have been many others. So you cannot accuse these people of having any soft corner for terrorism or without any concern for India's national interest. We deeply are interested in peace in South Asia, a South Asia free of terrorism, free of religious extremism. Of course, the situation in Afghanistan is complex. All of us know the circumstances in which the Taliban has taken over Afghanistan, most parts of Afghanistan, with the absolutely irresponsible, unplanned, chaotic withdrawal of American troops on 31st August this year. Now, the ground situation there is that Taliban has taken control. But Taliban do not represent the whole of Afghan society, which is why we have appealed for a government of national inclusion, national reconciliation. And we also appealed for a government, irrespective of who leads the government, to ensure that Afghanistan is never used as a launch pad for terrorist activities against any country near or far. This is the bottom line, and this is a concern that all the countries in the world share. India, as well as the United States of America, China, as well as Russia, Iran, as well as even Pakistan. And therefore, we believe that the international community today is in a situation, is in a condition to make it almost impossible for Taliban to allow Afghanistan to become a sanctuary for terrorist forces. And if they don't do this, then I'm absolutely certain that they will be out of power very, very soon. At the same time, we have also appealed to the international community that we all have to come together and help Afghanistan, which, as I've said, has gone through hell, to help Afghanistan rebuild itself, help the people of Afghanistan achieve national reconstruction. This has been our sole and principal purpose in issuing this appeal.
You mentioned the return to sovereignty for Afghanistan after close to 30 years. Some people might take objection to it for the simple reason that they might argue that the return that you're talking about is essentially Taliban centric, a group which is so medieval in its mindset that they will not see this sovereignty as broader than their own. How do you answer a criticism like that?
I am reminded of this saying. I think it's in the novel 1984, that all men are equal, but some men are more equal than others. Similarly, there are people who believe that all nations are sovereign. The sovereignty of all nations is equal, but the sovereignty of some nations is less equal than others. Afghanistan has the right to be a sovereign nation as much as India, as much as the United States of America. Afghanistan belongs to Afghan people. If Taliban misuses that sovereignty, then it is a responsibility and the prerogative of the people of Afghanistan to fight against them. It is not the concern of any other country to take on the responsibility of ensuring that they have a responsibility to build Afghanistan. They have a responsibility to export democracy and modernity into Afghanistan. This is what the United States tried for 20 years in the name of bringing Afghanistan into modernity, and spent more than $1 trillion. And in Indian terms, in Indian currency, it's mind-boggling that America has spent over 70 lakh crore rupees. On what? What have they achieved? What have they achieved for themselves? Forget what they have achieved for Afghanistan. What has the United States of America achieved for itself? So this is a moment of honest introspection for Americans and their Western allies. And therefore, it's a welcome moment that Afghanistan today is free of foreign interference. Now, coming to Taliban, as you said, is a group that is uh, influenced by medieval ideology. That's true. Whatever they have done in the past has, I mean, it is certainly not to be supported, not to be condoned. But I am sure that the people of Afghanistan will find the right way when they decide the destiny of their nation themselves. Just as India has had the responsibility and the right to determine our destiny ourselves by driving the British out, Afghanistan has done the same, first by driving the Soviets out and then the Americans out. And it is now the responsibility of both the people of Afghanistan and the international community to ensure that there is national reconciliation, national inclusion, and this is what we all have to do together.
How do you think India has handled the epic unraveling of the US engagement, especially the nearly unmolested return of the Taliban? Have we done a reasonably okay job, or we still are grappling with the confusion that has ensued?
Mayank, you used the term American engagement in Afghanistan. I mean, that's a very, very mild word to
It
use.
is. I mean,
And,
it's
and
an
permit me
occupation and invasion. Yeah, sure.
and permit me to say that the right word is occupation, the right word is war, right word is invasion, in which tens of thousands of people were killed, civilians were killed. Now let's go back in time. September 11, 2001, when there was a terrorist attack on the United States of America, and the entire world condemned it. Nearly 3,000 people died. And retaliation, the United States of America attacked Afghanistan, saying that it was a sanctuary for those terrorists. Although there was not a single Afghan amongst the 20 terrorists who attacked United States of America. By attacking Afghanistan and continuing the war, bombing almost indiscriminately, and there was a time when they even dropped what they boastfully called the mother of all bombs, the mother of all bombs that killed hundreds of innocent civilians. For 3,000 Americans killed, now tens of thousands of Afghans killed. Now, is this humane? Is it pardonable? So, therefore, it is not engagement, it is invasion and occupation that has boomeranged. And at least now, American people, as well as the American establishment, should do some honest soul searching.
What do
Now,
you read?
your question was about how India has handled it. I think that India has handled it very cautiously, because our primary interest, when this thing began, withdrawal began, and the chaos happened, was to ensure return of Indians who had been working in Afghanistan, and of course our embassy staff. But if you go before that, uh, India did a mistake by putting all its eggs in the government of Ashraf Ghani, the former president of Afghanistan. We relied almost entirely on him, thinking that his government was stable. And this is precisely what even the Americans were doing. And what happened? The so-called Afghan army did not offer any resistance to Taliban, and the president himself fled the country. So that was a foreign policy mistake. India should have begun engaging Taliban much earlier, just as several countries have done. The Chinese have done, Russians have done, Iranians have done, even the United States. United States started dialogue with the Taliban way back in 2013 and reached an agreement in 2020. So your question about India's It has two parts. Until the withdrawal, we had depended entirely on Ghani government, which was wrong. But after the withdrawal, I think we have adopted a very cautious approach, a pragmatic approach. And the good thing is that just day before yesterday, there is news. For the first time, India has acknowledged official talks with Taliban in Doha, where our ambassador received a senior leader of Taliban's Stanixai. The meeting was at Taliban's request, and it happened in our embassy. And this official acknowledgement of a certain dialogue with Taliban is welcome, and this is what we have done in our appeal yesterday.
You mentioned India making a mistake in not opening a line of communication with the Taliban earlier. The simple fact is, it's been known for at least 10 years now that the Taliban is making very significant gains. In the last 5 years, it was clear that they are going to be there soon. In the last 2 years, it was even clearer. And yet, we didn't quite jump into it, despite, as you pointed out, other countries doing that. Why do you think that is?
So I was saying, Mayank, that in my understanding, there are two contradictory aspects to Taliban. On the one hand, it is an organization influenced by a fanatical interpretation of Islam, as a result of which it tried in the past to impose its own very harsh and bigoted Islamic rule on Afghan society, and I'm sure that Afghan people will reject it in due course of time if Taliban try to do the same again. But there is another aspect. Afghans have driven two superpowers out of their country. Soviets first, and then Americans. Americans or Soviets did not go back on their own. They were defeated. They were fought against. Who fought them? Many Afghan organizations, groups fought. Amongst them was Taliban. Now, in my opinion, to that extent, they are Afghan patriots. Now, let me say that if India is attacked by a foreign force, foreign army, occupied, colonized, my duty as an Indian patriot, my foremost duty as an Indian patriot, is to fight them back until the last drop of my blood, which is what I will do. Now, which is what Afghan people have done. And to that extent, they are Afghan patriots. So there are two contradictory features of Taliban. We must not simply call them some medieval ruffians and this and that, which we see in the Indian media, because the fact of the matter is they have fought against and successfully fought against a mighty power and now taken control of Afghanistan. But fighting a war is less important than governing a country. Now they have the responsibility of governing Afghanistan, which is going to be extremely challenging. And if they want to govern Afghanistan, they have to change their ways. They have to gain the legitimacy of the international community, which means that they have to abide by the resolution passed by the United Nations Security Council a few days ago. First and foremost, they must ensure that they do not allow any terrorist group to operate out of Afghanistan. Secondly, they must treat all Afghans equally, Muslims, non-Muslims, especially Hindus and Sikhs, and other other Muslim minorities such as Hazaras. Equally importantly, as soon as they form a government, which is expected to happen tomorrow, Afghans must show that they treat Afghan women with respect, dignity, and ensuring their rights and freedoms. Now, this is an expectation of the entire international community. If they don't do it, I'm sure that Afghan people will take good care of them by removing them from power. And of course, the international community will teach them a proper lesson.
Give me one good reason why the world and India should believe anything, specifically on the assurance that the Afghan soil will not be used for terrorist activities coming from the Taliban at this stage. What incentive do you think they have not to do any of this anymore?
First of all, you have to at least listen to what Taliban have been saying. You may not completely believe in what Taliban have been saying, nor do I believe in everything that they say. But first, we should listen to what they are saying. They are saying that they will not allow any terrorist organization to operate from Afghanistan, and they want good relations, friendly relations, peaceful relations with the entire world, no country excluded. They have given a very specific assurance to India. Now, you ask me if there is a good reason, but the fact of the matter is that every country today in the region, that is in the geographical neighborhood of Afghanistan, is worried about terrorism. Now, let's look at China. Is China less concerned about terrorism, Islamic extremism? They are fighting a big a menace of separatism in their own country in Xinjiang. So, will they allow Afghanistan to be used by separatists from Afghan soil? I mean, that would be ridiculous to believe that China would like that to happen. Russia has several Central Asian republics which are Muslim majority. Do they want Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenia to come under the influence of religious extremism? No. Russia has a similar concern. Now let's take the United States of America. Does the United States of America ever want Afghanistan to become a hotbed of terrorists and extremists? No. So there is a certain convergence of interests, of concerns in the international community. Now, this will ensure that Afghanistan, the Taliban will have to behave. There is one more reason. You see, Afghanistan is today in shambles. The economy is completely broke. And even after 20 years of war, on which, as I said, uh, the Americans spent over $1 trillion, today 75% of people in Afghanistan are below poverty line. There's no employment, no livelihoods. So their first concern has to be to put economy back in order, start governing, putting the state structure which has been shattered. So their priority, their first concern is going to be how to bring peace and stability back in Afghanistan. And we should give, to this extent, we should give the Taliban a chance while not lowering the guard.
One of the gravest concerns that you somewhat touched upon is, apart from their lack of expertise, I'm talking about the Taliban, in any constructive governance, is that the Afghan exchequer is empty. Do you think that, in a perverse sort of way, might work as a leverage from the international community? Because even the Taliban needs money to do whatever they want to do. So, do you think that is one possible entry for the rest of the world to moderate their thinking?
Mayank, you're right. The economy is in shambles. Just look at the condition of the Kabul airport. When Americans left, they even left the airport infrastructure in a damaged condition. I mean, this is not a behavior that that brings goodwill to the United States. Therefore, Taliban require, at the most immediate and basic level, they need international cooperation to put their international airport back in operation 100% safe and 100% smooth. But then there are many other challenges that the Taliban have. How to, uh, we don't know their foreign exchange condition. Perhaps they may not have any reserves and resources to import things that Afghan people need. So, infrastructure, building destroyed schools and hospitals and homes and cities and villages. Now, all this is the prime concern. And this is why I believe that, first of all, America should come forward. They have created the mess. They should at least take some responsibility in contributing to the rebuilding of Afghan society, infrastructure, economy, but not United States alone. Even other countries should do it, including India. And we can say with some pride that in the most difficult conditions, India India is not a very rich country like America, but yet we invested in infrastructure projects. Way back, more than 3 decades ago, India built a children's hospital in the name of Indira Gandhi, and that Indira Gandhi Children's Hospital has brought enormous goodwill amongst the people of Afghanistan for India. We have built dam, we have built other infrastructure projects, and we should continue. And the Taliban must safeguard India's projects. Similarly, China should come forward, Russia should come forward, UAE should come forward, Saudi Arabia should come forward and help Afghan back, to normalcy. Now there are challenges. In the process of helping Afghanistan, we should also ensure that Taliban actually changes its outlook as well as its practice.
The interests of Afghanistan's regional neighbors, such as China and Pakistan, are in direct conflict with those of India, not to mention their own individual decades long rivalry and animus. How hopeful are you that these three main stakeholders would be able to work together to achieve anything worthwhile in Afghanistan now?
There is a certain mistake that many people make in India, that just because we have some concerns and some disputes with China and with Pakistan, we should oppose whatever Pakistan does and we should oppose whatever China does. I think that's counterproductive, and that is not going to bring any benefits to India. The fact of the matter is that China is also Afghanistan's neighbor. Pakistan is also Afghanistan's neighbor. Pakistan, of course, is guilty of misadventure by trying to use Afghanistan for its own so-called strategic depth policy. But in the process, Pakistan has paid a heavy price. We all know that Pakistan became a victim of terrorism. They had to wage a very bitter war against their own Taliban, the Pakistan Taliban, or TTP. 70,000 of Pakistani soldiers have been killed, and thousands of Pakistani civilians have been killed. And we all know there was a horrific attack, terrorist attack on school children in Peshawar some years ago. Moreover, hundreds of thousands of Afghan refugees have come into Pakistan because of the troubled conditions in Afghanistan. So it is not in Pakistan's interest that Afghanistan continues to be unstable, continues to be in turmoil. So therefore, as I said, there is a congruence of interest today that India, China, and Pakistan, all three countries are against terrorism and extremism. And therefore, we should have a dialogue with China, we should have a dialogue with Pakistan, and work together for peace in Afghanistan. Now, let me point out one more thing, Mayank, that we should pay attention to some very welcome things that the Pakistani military chief, General Bajwa, has been saying in recent times. He said, it's a time to change our thinking and change our policy. and bring peace to South Asia. And we want peace and we want good relations with all our neighbors, especially with India. You know that in February this year, we concluded a ceasefire agreement with Pakistan on LOC. And since February, there has been no LOC ceasefire violation. That ceasefire has held, which is a good thing. And furthermore, the two countries also decided in February that they would continue dialogue addressing the core concerns that vitiate the atmosphere and disturb peace between the two countries, which again is a very good agreement. Which means that India and Pakistan have to have a dialogue. India and China also have to have a dialogue. Is there a military solution to the border dispute along the LAC, line of actual control in Ladakh? Can India defeat China? Can China defeat India? The problem can be only resolved through dialogue. So I think we are simply exaggerating and misrepresenting, saying that the Chinese are our enemies and Pakistanis are enemies, and therefore we should not have any dialogue or any common cause with them. Now, this is a dead end. It will not bring any benefits to India.
Finally, to conclude, how realistic would it be for India to recognize any possible Taliban government that's in the offing now? I think today they are likely to announce, or maybe they already have announced, their supreme leader there. So, what is your expectation? Do you think India should recognize any future Taliban government?
Before I answer this question, Mayank, let me tell you that my own experience of Afghanistan, visiting Afghanistan, has convinced me that there is a huge reservoir of friendship and goodwill amongst Afghan people towards India. I was there in Afghanistan in February 1989 when the last Soviet soldier left Afghanistan. I interviewed the then Afghan president, Muhammad Najibullah, when I was a journalist of the Sunday Observer. I covered that event. I had visited Afghanistan even earlier, and therefore it is in India's own interest that we continue our good relations with Afghan people. Now, it is not for us to decide who governs Afghanistan. Can we decide that so and so should be the president of Afghanistan, so and so should be leading the party? That's for Afghan people to decide. And that's what the rest of the international community has done. Now, United States of America, as I said before, they knew long ago that Afghanistan is now going to be ruled by, or at least led, a government will be led by Taliban, and that's why they started negotiations with Taliban 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Americans have done it. The Taliban delegation was invited to visit Beijing. The Chinese leaders have held talks with Taliban in Beijing. So have the Russian leaders in Moscow. When other governments in due course of time give recognition to the Taliban government, which is what I expect, India will be left with no choice. India will also have to give recognition. Now, what is the timeline, how it will happen? Of course, we cannot predict. But the fact that we have started officially engaging Taliban a few days ago, which was, we had been having secret talks with them some time back, but first official acknowledgement of talks with them happened day before yesterday. And I expect these talks to continue, leading to recognition.